Bullshit.
The No BS Marketing Show is brought to you by Larimer's men's and women's designer clothing. Free shipping, free returns. Shop men's and women's designer clothing, shoes, accessories, jewelry, and more online at larimers.com or in-store downtown Pittsburgh. It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today, excited to hear from Aradhna Oliphant. But first, let's cut the bullshit. I hear business leaders say something from time to time that both surprises me and pumps me up. When I first tell you it, you might wonder why it excites me, but the phrase goes something like this. We don't really need marketing, or we don't really do marketing. Then they go on to say something like, because we're really an RFP-based industry, or we sell to so-and-so market and it's pretty straightforward. But the gist is we don't need or do marketing. They say, we do some BD. That's the big phrase. BD. We do some BD, meaning business development. Or they'll say, we got a sales guy. It's never a sales woman, a sales lady. It's always, we got a sales guy. But we're good. We don't need marketing. I laugh inside, and then, as I mentioned, I become excited because I know they have an incredible opportunity ahead of them, and it's my job to do my best to explain what real marketing is. Here's the deal. If you're breathing, you need to do real marketing. Yep. I don't care if you work at a nonprofit or not-for-profit, like Aradhna. I don't care if you work for a business-to-business company. I don't care if you're in construction and only do BD and do projects for the state or federal government. I don't care. You simply don't understand marketing if you think you don't need marketing. The reality is that real marketing is about clearly defining your target audiences, who you want to reach and influence, and realize that who you market to is different than who you sell to. Who you market to is different than who you sell to. I'll dig way deep into that phrase, that subject on a rant dedicated just to that in the future, but suffice it to say that you need to look beyond the obvious target markets, then drill down those target markets through some serious segmentation, no BS segmentation. What I mean by that is people will say, we're trying to reach women 25 to 40 years old. That's two variables. That's crazy. That's not enough. Real segmentation only happens with hard work, honesty, and courage. Then marketing involves leveraging marketing intel to find out what those target audiences really want, what they think, what they perceive, and you find a way to give that to them, develop it if you don't already have it, and give that to them when and where they want it at a price they're willing to pay. Then you can tell them about it again and again by positioning for each segment. So yes, you, if you're breathing, need marketing. The no BS kind. Our guest today is Aradhna Oliphant, President and CEO of Leadership Pittsburgh Incorporated, a premier resource for community leadership identification, connection, and development in southwestern Pennsylvania. Prior to joining Leadership Pittsburgh, Aradhna served as the program officer of the Forbes Funds, a supporting organization of the Pittsburgh Foundation. She's also held other leadership positions that she'll tell us more about as well. Aradhna, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dave.
What'd you think about the rant?
Pretty impressive and true.
You market.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. I mean, I say to all of our folks that I come in touch with, especially those who are enrolled in our Young Leaders program, that if they think that they don't market themselves every time they are coming in contact with someone, and then 10 years down the line, they go, my career didn't progress. You know what? They were not marketing themselves.
Exactly. Well, we have a lot to cover. So let's start by having you walk us through your educational background and your career journey.
Oh, my. Okay. So educational background, bachelor's from India. I grew up in India. And a master's, my first master's in psychology was from India.
Master's in psychology.
I know, be afraid.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, jeez. That's no good.
Except you're safe because I don't analyze people. My training was in analyzing industrial processes, more OD kind of stuff. So you're safe. Okay. You're safe. Right. You're safe. I'm not a clinical psychologist. So that was my first master's and then I came to the United States as a result of an arranged marriage and got my second master's, an MBA. And again, with a focus on OD. So I've always been interested in how people function within organizations and how organizations function as hopefully a cohesive, innovative unit for the sake of the organization.
And that's something we're going to dig deep into. But I have to start with saying, when you first came to the United States, where did you go?
Went to New Jersey, which is where I was going to get my MBA from Rutgers. So went to Newark, New Jersey.
That was your first impression
in
of the United
1987. Imagine. Wow. That was my first impression of the United States of America. Mm-hmm.
So what did you think immediately?
I was jet lagged. So I, did not really, I was just so scared to be, I was a new wife. It had been an arranged marriage. So I really did not know my husband. And I know, Dave, you're saying, is it the same Aradhna that I'm talking to? Yes. I grew up in a pretty traditional kind of an environment. And so I came to the United States and I was just trying to let this whole new life just get into me. I did not know what I was getting into. So I really didn't think much, good or bad, about Newark.
So you get the MBA.
I get the MBA.
And how does that compare to the master's in psychology just in general? Because there's a lot on the MBA side, you do a lot on the organizational development, and the marketing is all about kind of trends in people.
Now, remember, this was 1987, so that's a long time ago. I'm old. The psychology part of it was very relevant to my minor in my MBA, which was human resources development. Mm-hmm. And so that translated well. What was frightening was the math side of the MBA, the financial management and the optimization. And they were, PCs were just coming on into universities. So there was still all the coding that needed to be learned. And I had been on an arts track in India, because in India, when I went to school, they would track people very early on. So I was in 9th grade and I was supposed to choose my future. And I chose what we would call in our country, in the United States now here, liberal arts. That's which then meant that I did not do any math, real math, since 9th grade. So then to come to the United States and be enrolled in an MBA program with financial modeling and all of that, that was challenging. But hey, you study hard, you work hard, and you don't want to let everyone else down. So you just do it.
Then you're done with the MBA. So now you have 2 masters. You're now getting much more comfortable with Newark. Where do you go for that first job in the United States?
Okay. So just because I got the degrees didn't mean that my path in life was going to be in the business world. My path in life was supposed to be as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter-in-law, as a daughter. So that was my path supposed to be my path in life. And I was all of that, and hopefully I was good at most of it. I had my first son when I had done my all my coursework in my PhD program, because I was studying towards a PhD while I got my MBA. So, and I have what is called an ABD, all but dissertation. And so I thought, I can take a break. I'd cleared my comprehensive exams, major and minor. And I thought, I'll take a break and I'll come back and write my dissertation. Well, my dissertation is 27 years old. Never went back to that. But all of that to say that I always loved to learn. And so I couldn't really, even if I was not going to have a career in the business world, I never wanted to just just give up all the work I had done in my studying. So I would teach a little bit at a college or a university. I was mainly a wife and a mother for the first few years after my MBA. And I was blessed with 2 sons. One is 27 now, and the other one is 23. And so I would teach I would teach adjunct in a college or a university in New Jersey.
And when did you so you're overcoming all kinds of stuff, and you were kind of put in some boxes that you've obviously expanded well beyond and doing all this really cool stuff. But I found it interesting that you were, right from the beginning, you love to learn and you love to teach, and then leadership development was also in your background early on. So you are really doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I just feel so blessed. Don't get me wrong. I run a very small, very tight, very effective and efficient, we believe, nonprofit organization. So there are days of stress, but I truly love what I do. Just truly love what I do.
Well, how did you get to that point? You ended up, after the teaching, what was the next couple moves before you got to the Forbes Fund?
So all of this that I described to you was happening while I was still in New Jersey. And then I did a little stint for a very short time as an executive director of a almost failing nonprofit in the arts arena in Princeton, New Jersey. Because by that time, my children were a little bit older, and I knew I needed something more than just teaching adjunct. Teaching adjunct, I don't know if you've ever taught.
Yes.
You have. So you know it
right now. Yes.
Yeah. Where do you teach?
Indiana University of Pennsylvania.
So it can be pretty lonely if that's all that you're doing, because you don't have a community. Like, you're doing it, but you have your own thriving business. Right. But as I was doing that, I was being a mom and a wife and an adjunct teacher, in a college. So I would prepare hard, go and teach while my children were literally napping with the babysitter, and then come back, and there I was again alone. So I knew I needed to do something else. Something in my heart was like, I need to do something else. And my children were a little bit older by then, so I thought maybe I will serve on a nonprofit board. And I knew nothing about the nonprofit sector other than to know that I need to do something else. I need to give back. I need to do something. So one thing led to another, and I got introduced to this gentleman in Princeton, New Jersey. By that time, we had moved to eastern edge of Pennsylvania, which is not that far from Princeton. So I got introduced to someone from Princeton who was very involved in the nonprofit sector in Princeton. And he said, Aradhna, yeah, you could be a good committee member somewhere, but here is a small nonprofit that's looking for some business management expertise, if you would be willing to take them on. And so that is what I did first for about 9 months. And then my husband at that time he accepted a position with the acquiring bank, which was PNC. He used to work in the financial services. And PNC at that time was not this big behemoth that it is now. It was more of a regional bank. And they were very clear that it was important for family to move with the principal. And actually, my ex-husband also was very keen that we all move as a family. I did not want to move to Pittsburgh.
What was the misperception of Pittsburgh being steel town?
Yeah. Dirty steel town. A couple of my girlfriends back in Bucks County, because that's where we were living, would said, "Where are you going? You're moving to Pittsburgh?" And they would literally say it like that. And
they're just mad because we have 6 Super Bowls.
Well, I didn't even know Steelers at that time, and so I did not want to move. 1, because of the perception. 2, because I had finally begun to develop community of some women around me in the United States of America. I didn't really have family here other than my husband. And so I did not want to leave them.
So that's tough.
Yeah, so that was tough. But, the universe knows more than one does at any one given point. And 5 years later, you look back and go, that's why, I was kicking and screaming, because here's what was in store for me if you engage with what is in store for you. So so we moved to Pittsburgh, and we lived not in the city at that time. Wrong move. We should have lived in the city. And also
Where'd you come to initially?
Wexford. Nothing against Wexford.
No,
I've
but
got a lot of
that's
good friends in Wexford.
It's
But
a common thing, though, when you're coming from the outside area.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you would go to Cranberry, Wexford,
Yes.
where most of the people
Yes.
coming into town end up living.
yeah, and so I've been in this community now about 15 years. So, the perception of Pittsburgh outside was more true then than it is now. Think about it. There were no riverfronts that you and I could bicycle on. Market Square was not what it is now.
No, Market Square
Right.
was awful.
Right. And there were no riverfronts, really.
Yeah, I agree.
And the new...
There was one crappy stadium, probably. No, they might have just been
there were
built.
two crappy stadiums. Even though I'm not much of a... I mean, I love the Steelers and the Penguins for what they do for the region and the Pirates, but I'm not a sports person much. But so the community was not what it is. The arts were there. The Downtown Cultural Trust was there. And, it did matter to us that the symphony was there. Even if I was not much of a symphony goer, it did matter to us that there was a symphony here and an opera here, because that said, well, this is not really a podunk town. And PNC was very good to us. Very good to us. And so we came here because of that. We lived in Wexford, and I was a mom. I volunteered. In 10 months, I was like, oh my goodness, I need to do something. I've painted enough walls in my house. And so someone at PNC, a woman at PNC who had met me at some of the corporate functions with my then husband, said to me, it looks like you want to do more. So why don't you come and have some lunch with some of the PNC women? And she took the initiative. I used to joke with her that was only so that I don't drive my then husband nuts and we go back to Princeton. They wanted him. He's a smart man. And so that then she organized that group of women for just a casual lunch with me, and where I shared that I want to get involved in the community. I was not looking for a job at that time. With God's grace, we were. I mean, if I did not work outside the house, our children would still be raised well, and we would still pay the mortgage. We were not rich or anything, but we would be comfortable. So that then led to an introduction to someone who said, yeah, there are committees and boards that you can join and all of that kind of stuff. But don't you, Aradhna, have some arts management, choir management in your background? And I said, yeah, I did that for a little stint. I don't read music, Dave. I just don't read music. So they said, well, there is this outfit in town that has been without an executive director for some days. Why don't you just meet with them? You'll just get a chance to meet with the people. So I met with them, and they were pretty desperate, and they hired me. And because the exec had been gone for some time, and they should have been desperate. So that was my first foray into the nonprofit world in Pittsburgh as the executive director of Children's Festival Chorus, which is an arts education organization. Wonderful small organization, does marvelous things for the children who go to take those classes. The children sing with the symphony and the opera and all of that kind of stuff. So I did that. Thankfully, they had a very strong artistic director, so they didn't need me to know the music, Christine Jordanoff. And so then when I was at the Children's Festival Chorus, Mark Weinstein, who used to be the head of the Pittsburgh Opera, he's an LP Leadership Pittsburgh alum. I did not know anything about Leadership Pittsburgh. He said to me, Aradhna, you must apply to Leadership Pittsburgh. And I said to him, you must be crazy, Mark. I'm a mother of 2 young children. I'm a corporate wife. I'm a new executive director. I don't have the time. And he said, if I could do it, you can do it, and you must apply. And when someone whom I regarded so highly as Mark Weinstein says that, you pay attention. So I paid attention, got through on a scholarship, and I fell in love with this community. I just fell in love with this community. And all the opportunities it had, all the hidden jewels it had, the people of this community. And so here I am.
Hear about how she makes the move from being Leadership Pittsburgh graduate, to Leadership Pittsburgh executive director when we come back. Hey, no BSers, you need to check out Larimer's men's and women's designer clothing. I've been a customer for over 20 years. Yep, when I was coming up and a clothes horse, moving up the corporate ladder, I quickly learned that Larimer's was the place in Pittsburgh for men's clothing, and it's the same for women's clothing too. You can shop online at larimers.com or in store in downtown Pittsburgh. 3 people, actually 4 now. Aradhna complimented me on my shirt today, and it's from Larimer's.
Yeah, it is. He's wearing, I wish your listeners could see you. You're wearing a pretty...
We'll put it on the show notes.
Oh, yeah. It's a sharp shirt.
Thank you.
And as a mother of boys, I know.
She knows. So then you end up, after going through the program, you go through Leadership Pittsburgh, which I did as well. What happens that you end up becoming executive director?
So I go through Leadership Pittsburgh, and by that time I was still at LP when they invited me to serve on the board, right after graduation from Leadership Pittsburgh class 18. So they invited me to serve on the board. I was flattered. I was very flattered. I accepted, and then I switched from the Children's Festival Chorus to the Forbes Funds, the affiliate of the Pittsburgh Foundation. And I was having a blast there. I was learning so much. My supervisor, my boss, Greg Baer, who's now at the Grable Foundation, he was amazing. I was learning a lot about community development, and I was learning a lot about human services, which is what I had not worked in other than through LP. I'd worked in arts and education, but Forbes Funds did not fund arts or education. So I was learning a lot. And then my predecessor, Beth Wainwright, announced her retirement. And my boss at that time at Forbes Funds said to me, you know what? They're going to come after you. And I said, no, I'm having such a blast. No. I'll not get into, there's a cute little story there, but I won't get into that. But anyway, so 6 months later, and they had asked me to apply. I was not in the search committee or the HR committee of the board, but they'd asked me to apply, and I'd said, no, thank you. I was having such a blast at Forbes Funds, learning so much, working hard, making a difference. And frankly, Dave, I didn't think I could do the job of the CEO of Leadership Pittsburgh because I'm an immigrant. Not just to this community. I'm an immigrant to this country. And to be the CEO of Leadership Pittsburgh, you almost need to know, it seems like, everyone. I mean, think about that. And for them to take that. So I didn't think I could do the job. I really, really did not think I could do the job. I held my predecessor in such high regard. Plus, I was having fun where I was, learning. So I said, no, thank you. And then they did a national search. I'm sure they surfaced some good candidates, but the committee and the board chair at that time felt that they had not quite found the personality fit, I think. And so one of the people on the committee said to me, Aradhna, you always talk about Leadership Pittsburgh and how it's anchored you in the region. Why didn't you put your money where your mouth is? In those many words. After a couple of glasses of wine. She knew how to push my buttons. And and then I took on the challenge, and they put me through the hoops. They looked at my references. They knew me, right? But they did a full-scale interview. They checked my references. They did all of that. And I was privileged to be offered the position.
I can remember when it was announced. I remember.
Like you probably thought, who is she?
Well, I have a little bit of a historic thing. I'm in the last class of Beth, so I missed being in your class. But at the end of our class, you came in, and they announced it. I do remember it. I said, okay.
Yeah.
It was Aradhna Donda, right?
That's right. Good memory.
Yes.
Good memory. Yeah.
So now you become the chief executive officer, Leadership Pittsburgh. And while it was a great organization, it was time to kind of move and grow and so forth. So talk about those first couple of years.
Hard. Very hard. The first 2 years were hard. First year was really challenging. Strong. You know how you buy a house? I'm saying this because we bought a 100-year-old house in Squirrel Hill. Not really thinking about what we are getting into, but it has good bones. And then you can build on it, right?
Yes.
You can change a few things and you can build on a house that has good bones. That's what this organization was.
Okay.
Good bones. Things had to be tweaked. It had gone through a lot. It used to be a part of the Chamber of Commerce, and which used to provide some of the infrastructure support. We had migrated out of the Chamber of Commerce by the time I came there, and so we were dealing with all the infrastructure ourselves. We were dealing with programming. And so Beth had her hands full, and she had done a lot in her 15-year tenure. And the community was changing, and the board saw that. So when Beth shared her intent to retire with the board, both Beth and the board knew that they wanted to do things a little bit differently than the way they had been done before, both Beth and the board. But just making a decision to do things differently doesn't mean that the pain is any less of doing things differently.
Uh-huh.
So it was very painful. And the board had to learn and push and pull a little. I had to learn to push and pull a little. I was very, very fortunate that there were about 4 or 5 board members whom I begged almost to stay through the upheaval, stayed. And we then started Leadership Matters, right? And leadership of a nonprofit organization starts with its board.
Uh-huh.
And so the board had to come to grips with what it thought it wanted to be versus what it was and what it could do and what resources we had. Did we have visibility that we needed, but we had been losing? And so first 2 years were hard. One was very hard.
Uh-huh. Hear more of my interview with Aradhna Oliphant on part 2 of the No